Technologies based on cutting-edge technologies are directly linked to the preservation of peace between two or more adversaries through the generation of strategic deterrence effects of technologies. In the context of our region of South Asia, that is between India and Pakistan, any strategic imbalance induced through the introduction of these technologies for military purposes by India would most certainly affect deterrence stability in South Asia. Therefore, for Pakistan particularly, it is imperative to ensure that it does not allow such strategic imbalances to be induced that will negatively affect the benefits and imbalance that Pakistan has worked so hard to establish through the acquisition of a robust nuclear weapons capability as the great equalizer in an operational environment of relative conventional asymmetry in selected areas of conventional forces. Some of the emerging technologies have been around for quite some time now and are relevant and vital, particularly to the security environments of countries like Pakistan, which are located in international crush zones and have to bear the brunt of the cross currents of international geopolitical pathway. East, west, north, south, as these play out in our region, even as I speak. In addition to the interplay of the cross currents of international geopolitical pathway, Pakistan continues to bear the strategic consequences of the unfinished agenda of the partition of India with the unresolved conflict over Kashmir with eastern neighbor. Therefore, for Pakistan's national security dynamics and for strategic stability in South Asia, the geopolitical challenges translate into a variety of threat scenarios, ranging from the good old-fashioned contact warfare to non-contact warfare like hybrid war, fifth-generation war, and the evolving notions of national security, ranging from the traditional to the non-traditional, all of which must be taken into account by Pakistan's national and strategic plans. It will be relevant for me here to mention or anticipate, with reference to this latest episode of the killing of 28 people in Pahalgam, an Indian illegally occupied them in Kashmir, that both India and Pakistan, while planning their respective operational responses and counter-responses for the near future, will take into account the deterrence effects of the respective nuclear arsenals as well as of the operationalized technology in the respective countries. Both capabilities will exercise a profound influence on the response options and decision-making available to each side. The situation, as we all know, is fluid. In this complex mix, we can also add the emergence of exotic and new technologies as these evolve and unfold year after year, not only globally but more importantly from Pakistan's perspective in our region of South Asia. If you've been following closely the two raging wars of our current times, the war in Ukraine and the one-sided genocidal war in Gaza, and now recently the meltdown in Syria, followed by Israel's relentless bombing of Syria's residual military capability, many of these technologies, along with their novel, lethal, and devastating results, are on full display, like a science fiction movie, for us professionals to marvel and take home lessons with relevance to our respective professional assessments and application where necessary in our own strategic and operational environments and in our own war preparedness. The study of the effects that are being generated by the new and emerging technologies in different domains and from different perspectives can be looked at from two interlinked prisms. One, the role of blend of emerging technologies in comprehensive national security broadly, and two, the strategic effects or implications of emerging technologies on strategic stability or deterrent stability in South Asia, which of course is of immediate and direct concern to us in Pakistan, especially in the aftermath of this Pahalgam episode. In my opinion, there is an obvious connectivity between the two prisms or perspectives. I would also like to take a somewhat philosophical and historical view of the term emerging technologies. The term emerging technologies in recent years has caught the imagination and attention of military professionals as something of a new and exotic term of our times. Perhaps because exotic technologies like artificial intelligence, hypersonic weapons, suicide drones, reconnaissance and armed but invisible drones, directed energy weapons, cyber warfare, robotics, space capabilities, and potential space warfare, etc. These conjure up a vision of a Star Wars-like intergalactic warfare from unknown faraway distances. In this faceless warfare, the adversary can neither be seen nor pinpointed for possible retribution and retaliation. A video game-like environment where an anonymous individual, not necessarily a traditional professional soldier, but as for all you know, a hired mercenary, a part-time college-going kid, sitting in Miami, Florida, casually playing on a video screen in the corner of the set-top compression room, who can blow up with mind-boggling precision Eman al-Zahab Zohiri in the balcony of a Kabul apartment. For a faceless cyberspace hacking operation, which can switch on the electricity grid of a megacity thousands of miles away on a different continent, plunging modern life into chaos and panic, besides inflicting massive financial losses. Or a few computer whiz kids sitting in an insignificant operational room in Tel Aviv, conducting strategically lethal and precision strikes on a wanted adversary like Ismail Hania Shaheer, generating the effects of a decapitating strike. Or the recently conducted deadly strikes on Dnipro and other strategically sensitive targets in Ukraine by the Russian hypersonic Oshadek missiles with speeds of over 10 Mach, which just simply cannot be intercepted by any known NATO air defense system. The effects generated through some of these technologies, therefore, include shock and awe, surprise, and destruction far in excess of conventional technologies as we have known them. Force multipliers in any way in Europe. This, ladies and gentlemen, is warfare without a name tag. This is not the future, this is here and now. As I said, on full display on the international screen of the two current wars, notions of traditional deterrent stability being blown away because of a one-sided acquisition of a capability made possible by emerging technologies. I'll repeat for emphasis, notions of traditional deterrence stability being blown away because of a one-sided acquisition of a capability made possible by emerging technologies. And for added emphasis, please note one-sided acquisition. It is true for Europe, it is true for transatlantic and for trans-Pacific. How then can it not be true for South Asia? But before you get too alarmed, let me put things in a philosophical perspective to calm nerves. Of course, we all seem to have latched on to this relatively new term or coinage of emerging technologies with much enthusiasm, awe, and novelty, as if the development and emergence of technologies before our current era had come to a stop, and that is only of late that technologies have made a breakthrough and started to emerge or re-emerge from hibernation. Philosophically speaking, if we look at technologies in a historical perspective, I would like to submit that for ages past, and for that matter for centuries past, technologies and technological developments in any given era were always dynamic, progressive, and generated profound strategic effects on the strategic stability, instability paradigm in that particular era, time, place, and region. Of course, with each passing decade, or a couple of decades, or even a century, the complexity and lethality of technologies certainly became more and more challenging in each era than in the eras past. But because science and technology are by their very nature progressive, innovative, and a marvel, new technologies did not really stop emerging, ever. Technologies remain in an unstoppable race to ever-expanding frontiers of excellence, innovation, capabilities, and mysteries. It is impossible to tell where and when these would stop, if ever. Today, if we were to look into the future, say 10, 20, or 30 years from now, I would venture to say confidently that the emerging technologies of today, which we find so fascinating and absolutely up there in the order of scientific and engineering excellence, and therefore perhaps creating strategic instabilities, will surely be overtaken by even greater and more innovative developmental marvels of technologies. It is in the nature of the beast, science and technology. One might even agree that today's emerging technology that we are viewing and debating with such awe will probably pale into lesser significance when the scientists of the future would outdo themselves in inventing even more exotic technologies in a couple of decades from now. But as surely as night follows the day, the flip side constant of the history of military technologies is that strategists, antagonists, scientists, and engineers in each era have invariably found antidotes and effective counters to the emerging technologies of their respective times. While many inventions initially developed for civil applications found their way into military applications, the fact is that in line with Newton's third law of motion, for every action there was invariably an equal and opposite reaction. Thus we find in military history that whether it was the then emerging technologies of archery, horse cavalry, artillery, a fighter airplane, a tank, a missile, a submarine, means of communications, lasers, satellites, or even a nuclear weapon, science and technology invariably provided near simultaneously a counter to the particular emerging technologies of the day. It is also a historical reality that all of these technological developments at different times in history did indeed lead to destabilizing the then prevailing strategic or deterrence stability order for a while, but only up to such time until a counter technology or antidote re-established strategic and deterrence stability. What follows from that past historical perspective, therefore, is that the current and upcoming technologies that we today are referring to as cutting edge or emerging technologies would surely soon enough find their counters and antidote through timely scientific human endeavor. It's only a matter of time. Strategic stability, politically and militarily speaking, wherever disturbed, will soon then be re-established. That, in my opinion, is a recorded lesson of history in the interplay of forces of science and technology and deterrence stability. In this context, I would like to briefly give examples from the short history of 75 years in South Asia, that is India and Pakistan, and recall the strategic effects of the then emerging technologies on strategic stability in South Asia, which were generated at various times in these 75 years. The inductions in Pakistan military of the then state-of-the-art technologies in the form of the F-86 saber jets, the F-104 starfighters, the varieties of Mirages, MiGs, F-16s, and now in India the Rafale fighter aircraft, the S-400 anti-ballistic missile system, the beyond visual range of BVR missiles, the various versions of US and Soviet-built tanks and artillery, culminating in the development of nuclear weapons in South Asia, conformed to the conduct of nuclear tests in May 1998. Add to this the long inventory of delivery systems comprising of a variety of ballistic and cruise missiles. All of these are examples of new or emerging technologies that arrived at a certain point in time on the South Asian strategic scene, played their due role in destabilizing the then prevailing strategic stability paradigm in South Asia for a while, till the other side did catching up, found an antidote of an equal and opposite technology, only to restore the disturbed strategic balance sooner rather than later. It is only logical, therefore, to expect that with the availability of ever-evolving exotic technologies for the purposes of deterrence, or for furthering military advantage against perceived adversaries, or for fighting wars, strategists and practitioners of war will continue to make adjustments and introduce innovation in deterrence strategies, war-fighting techniques, tactics, doctrines, strategies, documenting. As has happened so often in the past, some of the technology developed for civil applications with the good of humanity at heart will continue to be adopted wherever possible to serve the purposes of new types of warfare, kinetic or non-kinetic. The phenomenon also goes the other way around, where strategists and practitioners of warfare will continue to demand that a certain type or category of technology be developed by scientists and engineers through focused R&D to meet the ends of strategies, and so the cycle continues. The cooperative and corporate interests of governments, the military industrial complexes, the military strategists and practitioners, the think tanks and scientists and engineers of various shades perpetuate a common professional and industrial interest. I think I'll stop here. If there are still some gaps in my presentation, I'll be very happy to tackle these in the Q&A session. And of course, I'll now invite
an accredited trainer as well, which is offering 24,000 certification of the ISO. And second organization that is Persistron Global, and one is what mentioned, AISS, is totally involved with the development of AI systems. And we have been like installing, managing and developing the AI system in Pakistan as well as in abroad. So, technology, everyone is aware about this word. But it started once we have entered in the modern period of the physics. So that modern period of the physics actually is 19th century. When we have a theories for 12th century, 11th centuries, but we have seen the applications in 19th centuries. A lot of things like electricity is one of the most important technology. And second, then we have a different technology that we have been using in our houses, like silver to grinder, so these technology. So technology is basically changing your mindset. It's changing the doing of things. It's also give the easiness in your life. It's basically the advantage of technology. And when we can say that, like how the technologies, people are involved with the technologies. So there are four major areas where the people are involved with the technology. For example, one is the architect, second one are the engineers, third one are the users, and fourth one are the support technicians. Just to have, like, we talk about everybody have a car. You're using the car. Car is one of the technology. Someone are the specialists, someone are the architect who designed that car. Someone are the engineers actually who has designed their engines, they are the interiors, they design different things. And we all are users. We are using this technology. And then we have a problem, then we go to the mechanic, that is support technicians. So every technology actually has required these four areas, four types of areas of people are required. The users, number one, is huge. Then technicians are available. And when the users are there and technicians are not available, the technology cannot upgrade. Technology cannot move up. We have required full of support. Okay? Those organizations who have, you can say they are multi-billion organization, they have launched the product with technology, and they have provide the efficient support. Like you see the Microsoft. We have done in 1996 Microsoft Certified System Engineer course. Microsoft had launched the program, and you can then become a support engineer. So everywhere in the world, the support engineers are available, so the product is on hit. And then the few are the engineers and the few are the architects, same as AI. Right? So we have a fear about AI. From morning I have seen there are a lot of speeches, I have learned a lot of things with the experienced people. I know that they share their experience, marvelous speeches. But normally I can say that, sorry to say that, 80% speech are very negative. Thoughts about negative, that this happened, this happened, this happened. What will happen, nobody talks about. Okay? So my presentation actually is not negative. It's very positive. Okay? When the first computer came into the Pakistan, the people are hesitated about to touch it. No, don't touch it. It's going to be like something happens. The organization are not going to buy the computer. The typewriters having the fear. They have basically gone their jobs, same like as AI. Now it's coming, people have the fear that they have lost their jobs. I'll say that, and you will write it down. More than 8 million jobs is going to be initiated. And this I'm not talking about like raw wrestling. It's a statistical point. So we have, we started the technology and then we come up to the information system era, then engineering system era, then we have financial system era, then industrial system, energy system, intelligence system, and now today we talk about the intelligent with data-driven systems. Without having the data, you are zero. Whatever the technology you have. You have a data, but it is not aligned with your specific field. You are zero. You have a data, it is not clear, it is not concise, it is not appropriate, you are zero. If you cannot understand the data, because the data is spread, it's not available for you in the plate. You have to take the data, then you have to convert it according to yourself. That is data science. But data you have now, how you are going to multiply with a different statistical tool? How you going to apply it? How you can solve the complex problems? Yes, you have a computer, you can do it, but what the AI is doing? For example, you have a data since 1971 to here, like 2025, we have a video data, we have a text data, we have different recordings of the different great people in Pakistan. Now these data are in different formats, and I can say that if I need one particular person, one person, what he has said about this topic in his entire life, so AI will help you out, and it can fetch it, it can convert it, it can describe it, and give it. So you have to learn different tools. What are the tools available and can help you in your field? Yes, computer intelligence is normally, to talk about AI, there is cognition plus mathematical model and computer programming. That's computer intelligence. We talk about the artificial intelligence. Initially, when I had done my first PhD in 2004, so I basically worked on fractal neural networks. Nobody knows about that big thing. Maybe I can, if I stay sometimes over there, maybe I am the first person who can written the book on machine learning. So unfortunately, I have been in the market. I'm a man of practical person. So now this 57 domains of the AI is now converged into 5 million. Vision AI, sound, natural language, predictive, and robotics. Talk about robotics, your movements. Your human movements is robo. But it is nothing. If you have seen one of the movie that is Matrix, it was in 1999. Okay, and it has like 2,200 philosophical people actually are think about it and brainstorm it, and that movie actually has done it in 1999. Matrix. And he said, when the Neil actually is connected to the computer, he had fear. Oh my God, it is impossible. What? Actually, the body is nothing. Body cannot live without brain. So your body is nothing. When you're dead, you're actually not dead, but clinically dead. The brain is working. Biologically, you're working. So, same here. Robotics is a part of mechanical devices, but it cannot move without having any intelligence point. So you need algorithms in your brain to stable your body, to move your hands, to speak, to see, to learn, to understand, to memorize, to take decisions. So, vision, that is most importantly, eyes, alhamdulillah, Allah Ta'ala has given the eyes, that is 70% of part of your learning is being involved with the eyes. Computer have a camera and it's a vision. So through camera, actually, we have learned a lot of things. And then sound is speech processing and synthesis. And natural language, whatever your language is, English, Urdu, Burmese, French, Spanish, whatever. So you speak on it. Prediction is AI, is now data science. Whatever, and its predicted is forward and reverse, both sides. Not only forward, also have reverse. You know, today different mummies have been found, and then it is converted to the real picture through the algorithm, reverse algorithm. We call it in statistics extrapolation and reverse correlation. So that same algorithm in the universe actually it's worked with refined algorithms. So we have different algorithms as well. So whatever you have learned, if you recall, you can use the predictive AI. What will be happen through this all memorization, you can use with the predictive AI for forward business. Companies today have a data, they're already doing this with BI, business intelligence. So what is different between AI and predictive analysis? Actually, once we have a large number of data of sales, I have been working with the Nestle. So they have different different events in the entire Europe, entire Asia. So what they have done when they have a good big event, so they are going to hire the resources from that particular person. By more than 500, 600, 1,000 number of people are going to hire temporary basis to just have a one event, to conduct that event. So, and because of that AI, there is no AI, there is business. Like there's a large number of people are over there. You have an event over there, okay, and you can get more business over there. Small, countryside areas, just having a small activities over there. So, in BI, what we would like to ask, it tells us. Like I say in the financial sector. But in AI, it tells us, we are not asking, it tells us, it will happen. Like same as we talk about the climate change. If you could have a data, and we are going to use with the predictive analysis, so the AI will tell us this event possibilities is more than 90%. Right? And we have different approaches on the different areas as well. So, AI is starting, then machine learning is now more, for example, same as a human, a child, when he is going to understand, for example, he said, my dear, it's a red color. Yeah, okay, Papa, it's a red color. And when he see the pink color, he said, Papa, it's a pink and it's a red color. No, it's not red, it's pink. You know what is the difference between red and pink? So how the machine can understand the red and pink? So it's required machine learning for the iterative process. It's required for the deep learning to understand that the pink and red. And it's a light pink, it's a dark pink. It's a mix of reddish color, something like human is going to recognize a different thing. So initially we have a lot of required programming side. We have codes, different codes. Now through AI, that code is going to be limited. We have a libraries, we have a functions. Just call it and do it. But my research is not, I'm not going to use the Google and the Oracle, and my team actually had developed their own engines. Because we are not cyber security expert as well, so that's why basically we know that it could be happen in future. So we have our own models, so we are using our own engines of AI and everything. So that's why we have developed different products on this. Let's talk about the industry, the impact. How the impact is a personal life and industries and other areas of the AI. So there are a lot of industries, but today I'm going to talk about first different industries, one of healthcare. Whenever the technology come into the market, people usually use it in the healthcare over the world, and same like it. For example, infectious disease management systems, virus, germs, identification and controlling. I just need your small attention over there. It's not a very say they like small thing. It's a very big thing. Infectious disease, like we have seen in COVID, right? And we have realized the different sort of like germs now today which is emerging, it not going to be captured by the antibiotic, the recent antibiotics. It's not going to be healed up, right? So antibiotic is not working actually. Our immune system actually is working to fight with the different germs. And now we have required a new generation antibiotics. So, according to the data, whatever the like diseases are coming into the market, if the data is going to be centralized anywhere in the country, and we can understand this is the type of germs is coming up, these type of disease and this type of medicine actually is provided, but initially it was happened like in 3 days we can cover it, but now it takes 7 days. It takes 9 days to take the antibiotics and discover it. It means your drug is not appropriate. You have to tell to the pharmaceutical industry that chemical reforms are required. Right? So in next 5 years, what will be the diseases are coming into the market? And what are the medicines actually is required? And same as if you have a different sort of, like hospitals you have. So how many type of hospitals you have required? What type of machinery you have required? What are beds? So doctors can get the appropriate specialization on it. And same as the government can plan appropriately. Now in the gas and energy sectors, we have a different, like millions of dollars we are going to spend. And after finally we say that this is not an appropriate place that we have to drill. All the rigs are going to be there, drill down the drilling, and then finally we cannot understand that it's the appropriate place. So again, AI can help out to find the rightest place, where to have a rigs, where we have to drill down, and obviously predictive maintenance, product optimization, renewable energy, and carbon emissions. Everything can be first of all estimated, and then we are going to control it. Same as we have in education. Right now, unfortunately, the bachelor student which is coming out from the university, I have seen because I have my professional institute as well. So people are coming to me, sir, we have done this masters, we have done this bachelor's, but we are not getting an appropriate job. Why? Because they are not getting an appropriate information and study from the schools. So you need to change the curriculum, or you need something, if you don't do this, because the span of the technology is changing very fast. Within a 6 months, the technology is going to be changed. So how the curriculum can be devised and how you are going to with the different committees are involved. So how you are going to embed it with the latest one. So AI can help you out, that parallel what you can do. What is happening in all over the world. So ChatGPT you have DeepSeek you have now today is available free. But people don't know how to ask with the ChatGPT. So you need to understand that tool, how to use it very appropriately. And then you can find out this is my education, this is my era, I'm old, this type, I have been living over here, what should I do? What is the next generation technology that I have to learn? It will give you answer. It's not 100% for you, but obviously it's very nearly about the market. Because you are asking the same domain. Somebody would not like, my son, I am an engineer, my wife is an engineer. My son is not interested in engineering.
You start heading toward the
Yes, sir, 5 minutes. Because it's very important, I just have two, 3. So in education, we can use it in this street. And then we have a financial institution, most important part, the financial institutions. How they are going to detect the fraud, anti-money laundering. We have been developing a solution for anti-money laundering for banks. Because nobody can understand what happens inside. So that can be, financial planning, data analytics, and also controlling these cyber attacks as well. So I'm just passing this presentation fastly because sir is saying is the smallest time we have. Now in government, my one of fellow actually is with me. I'm one of the associate speaker also with him, but unfortunately there is some other commitment with me, so I hadn't joined with him. AI policing. And AI policing, me and he actually developed a work program for all over the country in Dubai. And he has called Pakistan, some people also has joined that program. And he has called over the world and he said what will happen next 30 years with like AI policing. So time is very, so national security and defense, most important part for us. How we are going to use that AI. There are different things. Judicial system and law enforcement. The lawyer has very, they have to learn about the different act, sections, laws. If you are going to ask AI, it can give you the answer. So in surveillance, security, safe cities, we are going to use railway management system. Very poor situation of our railways. And all over the world, the people actually are building their railways, and while we are basically building our buses. Still, sir, this is very, very important thing to check it out, because it's the most cheapest as a facilitation for any journey. I think so is railways. So I think railway needs to be reformed and formed with the new technologies. Then you can use in global trade. Government can also check out foreign investments and forecasting, budgeting with planning and development in different part. And then you are going to use in your personal life. In personal life, you have a daily assistant. If you are going to configure the assistant with the AI assistant with you, so at morning when you are just watching the newspaper, it will tell you what are your today's, programs, meetings, where you want to go first, what are your priorities, have you taken the drug, medicine, okay, have you taken this thing, so it's going to assist you. And education learning actually is same as you can also do driverless cars. Hassle today in Karachi to drive, right? Driverless car is personal area. AI robots now, cleaning is another part. Dishwashing, yes, robots are here. Now in America you can hire the robots for dishwashing. You can hire the robots for cleaning. Safety and security in cameras. Same camera can detect if any fire incident happens in your home, in your industry, it will alarm you. Okay, so you can save your home. Same as any spilt over there, any sort of other things which you are not required. So as you see, it's working like AI is working as human. And time is very short, but I'll tell you that why we are going to compare the computer with the humans. Just small part, because next presentation is based on chip. So chips actually has been developed by the silicon, and we also develop by the silicons. Chips are working on binary today. Science has already discovered that our system is working in binary. So it's very familiar to us. But obviously, as like I said, we are brought up, so our parents actually gives some norms, ethics, and different things they are going to develop us with that thing. Same as we have to making a rules, we need a regulatory department that to have to make a rules and regulations that you cannot going to use the AI rather than the boundaries. So, for example, fairness. If the AI is going to take your interview, and somebody is going to like fashion about it, like AI is very good. This person is, you have feed it up. You have to hire this. In future, it will happen. The interview is going to take it by the machine. HR is going to be shifted. The first interview is going to take it by the written interviews taken by the machine, and first interview, behavioral interview is taken by the technical interview is going to taken by the machine, and third maybe like behavioral interview maybe like is going to taken by the human. So like transparency and explanation. So that's something clear.
Yeah, 5 minutes and also.
Thank you. So privacy and data protection, like your data now everything is now connected to the internet. Whatever. I don't know what you people are doing, but we are already everything is in Google. And accountability and safety and security, beneficence, human oversight, all are need ethics, rules and regulation. So next decade, industry is available for $16 trillion industry. Okay. I'm not talking about the recent report by PIIA. Okay. So market is available. Thank you so much. I have taken so much time. Thank you.
Artificial intelligence and our limited national intelligence find it fascinating to see what is there. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Dr. Hamad Chima sir will be talking about the technological sovereignty. How microchips became the new oil in geopolitical reality. I just request the next two speakers, it's 15 minutes each.
I will set my time so that I don't go overboard. So thank you very much, Chair, for inviting me, and it's a pleasure to talk at this forum. So I was expecting a very diverse audience, so therefore the basic question to start with is what are microchips? So microchips are these small, magic blocks which you see in these gadgets, which are covered in the black lid, but the magic is actually happening inside it, which is designed, as the speaker said, using silicon. So in short, microchips are currently enabling our daily lives. We walk, we wake up in the morning, and all our course and the schedule in the day is kind of dictated by gadgets which are all based on microchips, and some of these gadgets are shown here. We talked about current technologies, the last speaker and also the chair talked about emerging technologies, but all these technologies are based on the enabling technology behind all of these, Internet of Things, AI, gaming, medical devices, military devices, autonomous vehicles are all based on the fundamental technology, which is the semiconductor microchip. So it is the critical technology which makes that all possible. So the market currently is around $600 billion in semiconductors, and it is anticipated to be $1 trillion by 2030, 75% of which is in the three areas of automotive, wireless communication, computing, and data storage. So just to break it up very simply, that the semiconductor ecosystem is divided into three parts. The first part is where the design happens. So design of the microchips happen, and this requires the manpower, the brain power, the tools with which it is designed. The second is the manufacturing of those microchips, and the third is what we call the testing of the chips and the packaging of those chips. So as I said, the first one requires people, engineers to design. The manufacturing and testing requires packaging, a lot of rare earth chemicals where these politics come into play, and also it is very capital intensive. These two domains of manufacturing and packaging require equipment, machinery, and tools. So who are the big players in these three verticals? So the design part is also called the fabless design. So these are the big names in the fabless design market, and you must have heard the company named NVIDIA, the most valuable company in the world. It is also a fabless company, which what it means is that it does not fabricate its own chip, it just designs them. The second part is the pure play foundries, which are now concentrated in the Far East, primarily in Taiwan. And then there are companies which do the testing and packaging. And there are some companies which do all three of them, which are called the IDMs, the integrated device manufacturers. So semiconductor industry and the ecosystem is truly a global market, and it has a value chain which is spread across the whole world. So if you notice this legend, this circle means research and design, this balloon means manufacturing. So you'll see a lot of balloons in this Far East area, and you'll see a lot of testing and assembly also happening here. But the research and design is Europe and North America, whereas manufacturing over the last few decades has moved in the Far East. So just to share a very interesting example, that a mobile phone which all of us use, it starts off with the research and development broken into like 5 or 8 steps. It moves to the far, the fabrication starts in the Far East, and then it goes back here for dicing and to a finished wafer. It is sorted, it is sent back to the Far East, and so on, until reaching the 8th step, which is where customers like us buy the mobile phone. So in this whole journey, it travels 4+ countries, 4+ states, and 25,000 miles before the product using semiconductor microchips is made. So it's truly a global ecosystem of semiconductors. And that is where the next question comes. Why is it so critical? It is critical because in the last 30 to 40 years, what has happened is a lot of offshoring from the Western world to the third world or the Far East. So this has made the countries like US more dependent on other countries like China or Taiwan, where all the raw materials, the rare earth metals, actually 90% of the rare earth metals used in the semiconductor process come from China. So there's a huge dependence of US on China because of this fact. And Taiwan, for instance, is the manufacturing hub. It produces 65% of the whole world's cutting-edge chips. All the GPUs, all the CPUs which AI uses is manufactured primarily in Taiwan. So therefore, the nation's lifelines have become dependent. Lifelines like communication, banking, military, aerospace, and transportation have become dependent on the countries which are not so friendly to the Western world. So that's where countries have identified that this is actually the new oil, because it is going to define in the next few decades what and how we can control the whole ecosystem of semiconductors. And therefore this new word was coined that this is the new oil. Another trigger which happened in about 2017 and 18 time frame was that US banned its semiconductor companies to sell chips to Huawei. Now Huawei is the biggest telecom manufacturer in the world, and it is dependent, of course, on a lot of chipsets which come from a lot of countries. So US, using its clout, banned to supply those chips to Huawei, and it also banned Huawei equipment sales over national security. So now this actually triggered a change here. So if we and there was a new term coined as the chip war. So we talked about in the morning sessions about the Cold War, but this is a new kind of war called the chip war, where China, US, their trade war was hinged upon the control over semiconductors. And therefore, as I mentioned, that it kind of triggered a chain reaction. So this was aptly covered by this book in 2022 called The Chip War by Chris Miller, and it has all the historical details of how semiconductor industry, first of all, it was concentrated in a few countries, but then it spread, and now there's a trend again to control the supply chain of semiconductors. So China, reacting to what the US did, the ban on Huawei, it said that it will now go for self-reliance till 2025. They will produce 70% of their chips in-house. And they pumped in $155 billion in semiconductors. This was in 2021. Then similar kind of reaction from South Korea, where they pumped in for $450 billion in the manufacturing domain of the semiconductors. US, we all know, announced a Chips and Science Act, $52 billion in 2021 in the Biden administration, where they wanted to bring technology, manufacturing back to US. So as I mentioned, offshoring happened in the last 30, 40 years, now they wanted to bring back. So they asked TSMC to open their plants in Arizona. They asked Intel to open new plants in US so that the whole semiconductor chain control would come back to US. EU was not left behind. The president of the European Union also made this famous statement that there is no digital without chips. And they also, announced an 11 billion euros package for the EU countries. Our neighbor India also announced a huge package of $10 billion in 2021, focusing on their strengths which they had developed over the last 20 to 25 years. And Saudi Arabia, more recently in 2024, they established a company called Alat. And Alat is 7 verticals. Among the 7 verticals, semiconductors was one of the top ones. And they have envisioned an investment of $100 billion to take leverage and become a leader in semiconductors in the MENA region. So I'll just share with you a very interesting story of how this control over semiconductor technology is so very important. So those of you who have gone to Netherlands, there's a small city called Eindhoven in the south, very close to Belgium. And close to Eindhoven, there is an even smaller kind of a town called Veldhoven. So Veldhoven is just a city of 50,000 population. What it is famous for is a spin-off which was formed in 1984, and this spin-off is now called ASML. This is a huge company, and actually what it is known for is this $380 million machine, which is the EUV lithography machine. Now this machine is that beast which manufactures the latest semiconductors, and ASML is the only company in the world which has this technology. So Netherlands is under a huge pressure by the US not to sell this machine to China or to their competitors, so that they don't get an edge over the semiconductor technology. So I had a video here, but I think that's not important. I can just show you some news snippets about ASML. Why is ASML the most important tech company you have never heard of? I'm sure none of you must have heard about ASML before today. But it controls the entire world's chip manufacturing process. This is how important it is. If there was no ASML today, you would not have GPUs, you would not have the latest chips in our mobile phones. So therefore, EU is also using it as a kind of a bargaining chip with the US and other countries. So that's why it's so very important. The semiconductor ecosystem, the players, and the technology, the control over technology is very important. So now, in the last part of my presentation, I will talk about what's happening in Pakistan. So Pakistan was kind of what I call a cycle of non-action. It was stuck in a cycle of non-action for a very long time. And because there was no relevant industry of semiconductors in Pakistan, I come from NUST, which is a top engineering school of the country. There was no pull to launch the academic programs to fulfill the needs of the industry in semiconductors, and therefore there was no R&D, and the human resource was also a huge gap. There was no human resource being produced. However, the good news is that things have changed in the last 5 years, where we have about 9 to 10 universities in Lahore, Karachi, and Islamabad, starting dedicated, focused educational programs on semiconductors. And in parallel, the other part of the puzzle, which is the industry, has started to come in to Pakistan. So we now have about 20 companies across Lahore, Karachi, and Islamabad. You can see the number of employees they have hired, and they are working on chip design in this domain. So just a summary, there are about 20 companies, but just 700 engineers. So in a country of 220 or 240 million people, we just have 700 chip designers in Pakistan, and these companies are now facing a huge shortage of engineers. Just to put this number into perspective, India started in the late 90s in this domain, and they now have 185,000 engineers, and all the big companies of the world have.
That's not big for a big country like India.
Yeah, there is, but just put it in perspective, we are not that small as well. But 1,000 engineer design centers is pretty common, in Bangalore or in Calcutta. All the big companies have design centers, but we are, lagging behind the scene, but still starting to take baby steps. We engaged with the Pakistani diaspora in 2024, talking to people how Pakistan can take a leap forward in this domain. We held semiconductor summits in Islamabad in 2024, and we also work on the national semiconductor policy. So this one was in 2022, and the latest version is actually very close to approval by the cabinet, and it is being led by the Ministry of IT and Telecom. So it's a very nice comprehensive policy. So these are very good positive steps in the direction of getting the share in the semiconductor ecosystem. Another question which is very regularly asked in our community is that among those three areas of design, manufacturing, and testing, which player should Pakistan become? So the answer lies in this slide, that it's the design. Why? Because it is 54% of the whole market, and it has the highest profit margin, but the key thing is that it requires trained HR. In Pakistan, with its huge, youth bulge and a good engineering, output, if we can just skill them properly, we can contribute in this market. The other two domains are capital intensive with lesser profit margins and smaller market share. So this HR shortage is not only for Pakistan, but if you see these numbers in different countries and regions, there's a huge HR shortage in this domain. So we can even target international market if we are able to prepare manpower in this domain. So the national semiconductor policy actually defines three phases in the semiconductor domain. So the first phase, they just want to focus on the HR development for the next 15 to 20 years. And then packaging and testing would be the next step, and manufacturing or fabrication would come even further in future, because it's very, very expensive. Just to put, as an example, a good fab requires $10 to $20 billion, for just setting up a good manufacturing facility. So just some sharing quickly our efforts at NUST of developing the manpower. This is the center I head at NUST. So it is focusing on enhancing the chip design, talent pool, upskilling trainings, IP, research development, and also helping other universities. So we have defined about 6 trainings, very focused trainings. We take graduate engineers and we run them through a 5-month rigorous training program, making them ready for the chip design industry in Pakistan. So we have partnerships, academy industrial partnerships with the 5 companies, and let's skip this slide, it's taking detail for the training program. Just sharing with you one successful recent example from January 2025. We inducted 35 engineers, 25 graduated, and 22 just got directly employment in a company, just one company in Islamabad. So my conclusion would be that indeed the semiconductor or the microchips are the new oil of our generation. It is very important for national sovereignty, because as the chair mentioned in his initial comments, that these chips go to the strategic devices, planes and whatnot, and it's a matter, if the control is elsewhere, it's a security hazard for the country. So we need strategic focus and of course policy continuity at the national level. Alhamdulillah, I can say that Pakistan is on the move in this domain, but I think it's a marathon and it's not a sprint. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Chima. That was cooperation and rivalry in outer space mean for the future of space exploration. Mr. John.
Yeah, so, thank you very much, Chair, and thanks to everyone who managed to find the time to gather here and listen to the amazing presentations that we've had. So following on the two previous speakers, they say that microchips are the new oil and data is the new gold. So that is a market that most people are currently venturing in everywhere in the world. So my presentation is on cooperation and rivalry in outer space. And I won't take too much time because I see our time for the day has already lapsed. So I'll try and speak for less than 10 minutes, if I'll manage. So now, the history of space exploration began in 1957 with the launch of Sputnik 1, which was the world's first satellite and was launched by Russia and the Soviet Union. And so this sort of set the pace for the international space race. And nations were rushing towards either putting a man in space or just establishing their dominance, because it was during the Cold War. So it wasn't about space technology, it wasn't about space exploration, it wasn't about science, but it was about which country has the most power to venture into space. And this can be seen with the US sort of hiring German rocket scientists to design the first rocket. So almost a decade later, we had the Outer Space Treaty. The Outer Space Treaty is where these countries that were warring against each other decided that it's wise to have a unified treaty that will make sure or ensure that space is equal or is shared by all countries. So no one could claim sovereignty in outer space. So today we see that we have new players that are entering the market. We have government, we have the private sector, and we have emerging nations or emerging entities that are currently also venturing into space. So now the question is, will space become a battlefield, or will it remain a shared frontier? And we're going to see this in my next talking points. So part one of my talk is going to be on the duality of space, where we have cooperation versus rivalry. Now space is a paradox in that it has the power to unite, and it also has the power to separate us in ways that we cannot imagine. So we can see this through joint missions, international treaties, and shared research that are currently happening. So one such venture is the International Space Station. And the International Space Station is a marvel for humankind's ingenuity. It is as big as a football field, American football field. And we find that more than 20 countries are currently sharing their operations in the International Space Station. And this is where you find that these are countries that here on Earth, they are warring against each other. But in space, they find a way to sort of work together and merge their technologies and their expertise to perform on research. But now the goal in mind is not who will emerge the best. The goal is what is best for humanity in the next generation. So we also see cooperation with the Artemis Accords. And the Artemis Accords are a set of non-binding principles designed to guide civil exploration and use of outer space. Now, the Artemis Accords is spearheaded by the United States of America and currently is joined by 54 countries, if I'm not wrong. So, an equivalent of the Artemis Accords is the International Lunar Research Station, and this is an initiative by Russia and China. So it's also a cooperation where you have Russia and China sort of visiting other countries and trying to get them to be a part of this program of theirs. Another instance of cooperation we can see is the African Space Agency, which was recently inaugurated on April 20th in Egypt. So this sort of, or the idea behind it is so that the African Space Agency can mimic what the European Space Agency has done. So each country has its own independent space program, but the African Space Agency aims to bring them together for joint missions and shared initiatives for the exploration and betterment of life in Africa. Now, other than that, there are regional partnerships that I might not be aware of because they happen in different regions. So Asia, Africa, Europe, the United States, where all of these are coming together in cooperation. And the goal, as I said earlier, is for the betterment of life in Africa. Now, we also have Pakistan. Now that I'm a guest in Pakistan, and the people are amazing, the food is amazing. But I was also interested in Pakistan's journey in space. Now, previously in his speech, the chair mentioned that it was formed in 1960. And yes, SUPAC was formed in 1960. From my perspective as a Kenyan and as an African, there is more development than we have had in Kenya. Because space activities started in 1960 in Kenya, but then it wasn't by Kenya. It was by the Italian and it was through a cooperation between Italy and the United States, where they established a launch facility in the coast of Kenya, so Malindi. It's actually a space center. Currently, it's not operational, but in the 60s, there used to be rocket launches that were happening from this base in Malindi in Kenya. So a significant achievement. I don't know if we can call it Kenyan or since it took place in Kenya. So the first satellite dedicated to X-ray astronomy was launched from Kenya on 12th December 1970. And it was rightfully named Uhuru, which means freedom in Swahili. So now, as you can see, I was talking about Pakistan, so that duality. The Kenya Space Agency was formed in 2017. So we can say, when put side by side, Kenya is a baby compared to Pakistan's efforts. But hopefully, as the world progresses, we are also going to get there. So Pakistan has, like Kenya, recognized the transformative power of space technology for national development. And its work in areas like Earth observation, disaster mitigation, urban planning, agriculture. These are all areas of focus that are quite beneficial for Africa as a nation, and but more particularly in Kenya. But let's not forget that in all this flowery talk about cooperation, rivalry can also arise. And that is where the duality comes in between cooperation versus rivalry. And I will start with the Apollo moon missions. So during the space race, the Apollo missions were not about space exploration. They were about who gets to the moon first. And we can see that when the United States landed the first man on the moon, what did they do? They planted a flag, right? If I come to Pakistan and plant a Kenyan flag, that means I am sort of owning sovereignty. Pakistan is my land. Most people tend to not look at it that way, but if you try and be more open-minded about it, then they had a reason to put that flag there. Because since that time, no other nation has planted a flag. No other nation has landed a man on the moon. So in as much as they signed the Outer Space Treaty, what does that really mean when it comes to global space politics or space geopolitics? So now we also see there's a race for the moon and Mars colonization. So right now, every space country or every developed space nations are rushing to the moon. We have China rushing to the moon, Russia rushing to the moon, India rushing to the moon. Pakistan is also sending a rover, if I remember correctly, next year to the moon. So you find that this is a form of who will get there first, or who will have the most progress, who will have the most resources on the moon. So now Elon Musk also has come with his Starship initiative, which aims to establish the first human presence on Mars. So now this is also a point where if Elon Musk does it, we will see so many other companies rushing to Mars. So what this happens is it sort of shifts the attention from Earth to outer space. So you find that billions would be spent in exploring Mars, but then problems or troubles here on Earth will be more often than not. So we also have another sector where rivalry comes in. and this is the establishment of satellite mega constellations. Now, this is an area where more and more companies come in, and you know what happens is the more you launch, the more crowded space gets, and the more emerging nations are at risk. Because think about it this way: if Starlink launches so many or thousands of satellites in space, OneWeb launches thousands of satellites in space, Pakistan comes with its satellites and put them in space, Europe, Russia, China. What happens is if a country in Africa or say Karachi has its own space program, then they won't be able to launch. Why? Because space is already crowded. So where does that leave them? It leaves them at the mercy of these companies that have already established their satellite presence. Also, it means that maybe Pakistan will have to pay these nations that have already established themselves in space to get their services. But you see, that doesn't build Pakistan, that doesn't build Kenya, it only builds SpaceX one way. So, another very crucial component of rivalry is the militarization of outer space. Now, this might not be such an immediate issue because most of the countries are concerned about exploring outer space, and there's no imminent threat about wars happening in space. But what science fiction has shown us is this can happen at any time. And it actually happens, but not to the extreme levels. We have anti-satellite tests where nations are performing or sort of expressing their powers or prowess by destroying satellites in space. So they will launch a missile from Earth and then destroy a satellite in space. What does that show? It shows that if China or the United States have a spy satellite in space, China can literally launch a rocket and destroy it. And then the US will also return that favor and destroy Chinese satellites. And you see more and more nations, allies that are part of these processes, they will follow suit. But you see, it is us who don't have a well-established space program that will actually feel the pain. So now competition is good, it can drive innovation, but then if left unchecked, it can also fuel mistrust and confrontation. So now the part 2 of my talk is a case study on Kenya and emerging space nations. So when I say emerging space nations, that includes Pakistan, Kenya, and any other nation that doesn't have so many satellites in space. So as an emerging space nation, Kenya, and by extension other nations of a similar trajectory, is not just an observer in this conversation. Our investments in areas like Earth observation, like I mentioned before, disaster mitigation, agriculture and urban planning, they reflect the broader priorities of nations seeking to harness space for sustainable development. Because at the end of the day, this is what matters for people or citizens of a certain nation. And this is from a point of view of if we launch an Earth observation satellite, how will that help the citizens of the nation? So it will help in whenever a place is prone to flooding or droughts, then you can use satellites to sort of predict these, and by integrating artificial intelligence, like the previous speaker was talking about, it can be easier to sort of say, this place will flood, you need to move. That's reducing the loss of life. So those are Kenyan investments. And then I also mentioned the Luigi Broglio Space Center in Kenya. So the Luigi Broglio stands as a symbol for regional space dominance. Why do I say this? If you look at Kenya, Kenya is strategically located along the equator. So which means if Kenya establishes a spaceport, then rocket launches would be much cheaper and easier and faster into space. How so? Whenever a launch pad is along the equator, this means that a rocket will have the initial rotation, the initial spin, which means it will use less fuel and it will take a shorter time to get into space. So this sort of builds the prowess of emerging space nations in that if Kenya has a launch pad, other African nations can sort of come and launch from Kenya, thus reducing the cost, which is way better than spending billions of dollars launching from French Guiana or other areas that launches take place. So now, So emerging space nations like ours have a unique opportunity and responsibilities. So we can serve as bridges and advocates for equitable access and peaceful utilization of outer space. And we can promote shared frameworks and sustainable development through space technology. So in this sense, our voice is not just important, it's essential. What do I mean by this? We already have giants that are in space, the United States, Russia, China, India, but then most of the time they are involved in other battles that really don't affect us directly. But then if we come in and take chance of that opportunity, then we can really make a difference. But this can only happen with cooperation, and not cooperation limited to country or intra-country cooperation, but also with the private sector and the emerging companies that are coming up from the countries. So the choices we make today will determine the kind of space future we create, a realm of cooperation or an area of conflict. So what must we do? First, we must advocate for strengthening of global space governance that is inclusive and considers the needs of the perspectives of all nations, including emerging players like Kenya and Pakistan. We must work together to prevent monopolization and ensure the vastness of outer space remains a common heritage for all humankind. And this was what I was talking about, satellite mega constellations and launches being limited to a specific demographic. That sort of monopolizes space, but then if we come together and spearhead these from our point of view, then it breaks that monotony and also builds our capability. So secondly, we must actively seek and foster inclusive partnerships that allow for the exchange of knowledge and resources between nations at different stages of space development. No country should be left behind. I was going through Supaco's website and they do a lot of cooperation and collaboration when it comes to space. So whether it's with the international community, whether it's in the regional community, and Kenya does this as well. Because you can't just wake up as a country and say we are launching satellites tomorrow. It takes a lot of capacity building, it takes a lot of technical expertise, and these can only be developed first before we can see the results that are impactful to us. Thirdly, we must balance the natural drive for competition with a profound sense of responsibility. Space activity is not isolated, it has direct and significant impacts on life here on Earth. Sustainability and ethical consideration must guide our endeavors beyond our planet. Basically what this means is holding countries accountable to their activities in outer space. So recently in Kenya or even in different places around the world, we've had instances where space objects fall back to Earth. So this is because countries are not responsible. You find them mentioning or using phrases like, space is huge, there's a lot of space of it, you can't crowd it. So what happens is when a rocket is launched, the body will stay there for a very long time, sometimes 10 years. But as gravity works is what goes up eventually will come down. So you find that more and more these orbits decay and this object can fall back down. So what happens when a 500 ton or a 1,000 kilograms or 1 ton object falls back on your house? Or you're working on your farm and it falls on your head, right? It will take years, or maybe depending on how systems work in your country, it will take years or months or days for the government to figure out who owns this so that the liability convention can kick in. And the liability convention is a treaty of the United Nations which says that the launching state is responsible for any damage to life, any damage to property or loss of life, because you can damage life. Yeah. So it will
towards the
right. I'm going to the conclusion now. So ultimately, space is not just about rockets and satellites. It's about us, our shared human ambitions, our fundamental values, and our collective destiny. So I leave you with this question. Will space be a realm of division or a platform for unity? The ambitions that drive us to explore the cosmos are universal, shared by people across continents and cultures. So, from the plains of Kenya to the valleys of Pakistan, the choice, like the stars that shine equally bright above us, is within our reach. Thank you very much.
given that it bans weapons of mass destruction but does not ban conventional weapons in space?
So the Outer Space Treaty, like any other law on the planet, at some point becomes obsolete because they were formed back in the 60s. What happens with the law is more often than not, they keep changing and the world is also developing. So calling them obsolete, I think, would be a stretch because they still serve a certain purpose. But I think them being updated to fit the current way the world is moving would be very essential. That is why we have meetings and different diplomatic sittings, like the UN Corpus, that try to find a way to integrate these new laws. And like you say, weapons of mass destruction, once they get into space, then it's over. Because imagine what in the Palestine war, what would happen if weapons were in space. So I think they're not obsolete, but they would definitely need to be updated, yeah, as soon as possible.
Question for the AI. Sir, you said you might. You hear me or not? Hello, yeah. Question from the AI person. I think Dr. Waqar is your name. Dr. Waqar, can you said that you people will predict what will happen. So would you like to tell that what will happen? And second thing, which you said that in Pakistan you have seen the development in the railway. Eh? It's the cheapest source, but the other transportation side is being developed. So I would like to respond this question, because if your railway minister is a transporter, then obviously the transportation side will be developed. And if your PM owns an airline, then definitely your national flag carrier will decline. What do you think about it?
There are a lot of questions in one question. I can say that, like, obviously, every transportation is very important. Like, you are here because of your car, your bike, or whatever you have. Otherwise, you came here by walk. So, over the world, the people actually has explored that one of the most fastest and cheapest transportation is rail. Okay, and now it's going to be worked with the electricity, and electricity is now coming up from the nuclear, it's coming up from the solar, it's coming up with the different resources. So that's why basically you can be able to manage it. That's why I said that. But obviously, as far as concerned your question, what is going to be happen? So in certain area, if you have a data, then obviously you can predict it. Today the AI can predict you, but the human cannot predict. The human cannot assess what actually happened in just like 5 years after that, 10 years, 20 years, what will happen? Where our economy can go? If we can collect some scenario, what will happen when Pakistan is going to grow or not? Maybe I can see that the Pakistan will grow. The Pakistan have some mistakes. Otherwise, when I came back to UK in 2008 here in Pakistan, so I have seen like Pakistan will grow in 2015. Unfortunately, what not happened due to some mistakes by the governance. When you don't have a good governance, you don't have a good managers, you cannot grow. Management actually helps you out to grow. So data is highly important. Specifically, you are going to pull it down and then you predict it, which your human cannot. It can work. It will work. It is working. Thank you.
Thank you. So, we have just time enough for two questions, microchips or the military? Microchips.
So my question is for Sparko with reference to your lecture on the it's on So how do you compare Pakistan's space program with Indian space program?
How would you compare it?
The difference
Yes.
between,
The,
please explain the difference between Pakistan's space.
one can make a slide and make a comparison of India, make a comparison of Pakistan. But I was honest enough to say, to start with, that it was the 4 decades, I called it a wasted 4 decades. I couldn't have been more strong with that. We wasted 4 decades. Even though Suparco was born in 1961, ISRO came in 1969, 8 years later. But you know where ISRO has gone, to the moon and the Mars. And Suparco, it was not till we pulled it out from wherever it was lying dormant, and we brought it under the SPD, Strategic Plan Division, because there was a linkage seen between the nuclear program and the space program. And ever since, this was approximately 2000. So 61 ka bana hua, 40 years later, it came to the SPD, where we gave it a lot of funding and direction and a certain objectives to be achieved, etc., etc. It took them almost 6 to 7 years before they were able to reorganize and capacity building, HR induction, etc., etc. So obviously, they lag behind. We are now going in a certain direction of the space program as it suits Pakistan's needs. Comparison, I won't say इसलिए because we're not in competition with this one. They have their own objectives and wish them luck. We have our own objectives and we wish ourselves luck. So our objectives and our direction, to begin with, it is of course always civil applications. So the satellites that have gone up in the last 10 odd years really, 2011 was the first. Between 2000, it took 11 years to get the first communication satellite Paksat 1R. And after that, couple of years later, a remote sensing satellite and a couple of other satellites, and now we've come to a stage where in combination with China, and in all this, of course, China has been most helpful. Entire cooperation has been with China. And we are now moving to a stage where next year, Suparco has been asked, or suggested by China, to nominate a space astronaut, if I may, who will join the other Chinese astronauts who go to the Chinese space lab for experiments for about 10 days or 2 weeks, something like that. So you can see that we have moved strongly in the last 20 years, 2 decades, ever since it came in water direction. And what all these things that I'm talking about that they're doing now has linkages with the essential strategic program. So they'll become part of the strategic program. In addition to the civil application, the civil benefits that this program delivers in any case. So there's no comparison. We're not in competition with this group. Like I said, ISRO has its own objective, we have our own objectives. In that sense, not counting the first 4, discounting the first 4 decades, I think so far for 2 decades has done a good enough job and is now on course to deliver what objectives, strategic objectives or civil objectives that will continue to be assigned to it. Fourth question, microchips.
Yes. Yes, sir. I am a member of the Institute and former police chief of Karachi. My question is to the panel that the microchip is the new oil for the world, but what are the reasons that Pakistan is lagging behind? And either this raw material or the microchip we have, because it was not and the lecture was not mentioned that what is the raw material used for the microchips. Or we have shortage of that microchips or technology from technical aspect, and to the policies, who is responsible for the Pakistan is lagging behind since so many years in comparative to our neighbors like China, India, and other countries. So kindly enlighten. Thank you.
So my short answer would be that were lacking behind microchips just because that's how we are lacking in all other fields. Because of the lack of focus and the lack of direction and policy. To the question regarding raw materials, the base material, actually Pakistan has a wealth of it, which is silicon. So silicon, pure form में अगर हम कहें तो रेत. So रेत silica से ये chips बनती हैं, but then it requires a lot of processing, and that happens in a very clean environment. ऐसा environment जहाँ जो technology terms में हम clean rooms कहते हैं उसको, जो it does not have even a dust particle in it. So that is what is used in the fabrication plants or the what we call the foundries. So other than silicon, there are the chemicals which are required, the rare earth metals which are required are very, very pure. So one certain chemical is called fluorine, which is 99.9999% of purity is required. So we do not have that kind of legacy or history of having such chemicals processed locally. Apart from that, it requires a lot of water, a lot of distilled water. So each plant, the fabrication plant has its own water plant, which takes normal water and distills it and uses it in the process. So manufacturing, in our opinion, it should be out of question for Pakistan because it is so capital intensive. It requires materials which are not existing. The expertise is not existing over the period of time due to reasons which I mentioned earlier. So the low hanging fruit for Pakistan is in the design side of the microchips, which is called the fabless design, which I alluded to in my talk, that it is 54% of the world market, of the 600 billion market, 54% is fabless design. What does that require? It requires trained engineers. That is what it requires. So we have a youthful population, and if we can just align our priorities straight for the engineering programs in universities and also upskill the existing engineers in this domain, we can do what India did. So India started 30 years ago in this domain, and starting with the universities, the IITs started programs focused on semiconductors and started producing engineers in this domain. And lo and behold, the companies started coming in the next 5 to 10 years. So Intel, Nvidia, AMD, which is a huge company of US, just celebrated 25-year anniversary in India. Its CEO Lisa Su flew from US to celebrate that anniversary. So it has been there for 25 years. What do they have? 185,000 engineers. So just to put an analogy, like the IT industry started in Pakistan in the late 90s, and now it is doing a reasonable job, about $3.5 billion of revenue over the year. The semiconductor industry, if we take the same journey, can actually give us 10x returns than the software industry, because a chip designer earns 10x than a IT person in Pakistan. So this is what I think Pakistan should focus on. It's late, but not never. So we have to better late than never, as they say. We can start in this domain, focusing on the design side. Thank you very much.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this brings us to the closure or end of this parallel session on cutting edge technologies. I, for one, stand very educated from the three members on the flanks: AI, microchips, and space. These are all subjects and topics on which, of course, one can go on or almost forever. And there's such fascinating developments in modern technology and modern science. We just I would like to end this session on the note that a lot of the discussion that has taken place, whether it's a presentation or the 3 or 4 questions, the essence that comes out is of putting the onus of poor progress, not enough progress, on the lack of governance, weak governance. There's something that we live with, which is our way of life, I would say, or part of our life. One can only hope and pray for better governance. But if in all these 3 or 4 areas that we've talked about, I would also not really put the blame, but responsibility is as much or perhaps less responsibility to the government as a public sector, as it is more responsibility to the private sector. Worldwide, you will see that the private sector, with enabling environment by the public sector of the government, and having made the enabling environment and the right policy to the private sector, which is expected to lead in any technology, in any field. These are just 3 or 4 that are talking about that there's a whole world out there. So when we hope and pray for better governance in Pakistan, I would just suggest very strongly to the private sector to take the lead, as indeed, as he's saying, $3.5 billion since mid-90s, make good progress. And I think in the future, one hears good things that the government is now facilitating and giving, I think, the right policies to enable the IT industry to grow. And hopefully in the next decade or so, one should expect that having been given this initial fillip, the industry will grow. And these are all interrelated, whether it's AI or microchips or space, or even the military side. So thank you very much for your attention. And my apologies for flight over time. Thank you very much.